Very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and tonight we have guests Kenneth and Farah Rose Deel. They're both Catholic spiritual warfare counselors, field investigators, demonologists, and it's a rare husband and wife team in the trenches of the paranormal, spiritual warfare investigations, as well as education, with a combined 80 years actual experience and studies related to ghost and demonic hauntings, possessions. Now, cradle Roman Catholics trained to currently find and uncover many of these spiritual wars that are going on behind the scenes. This is going to be absolutely incredible. I really appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure, folks, to check out demonologytoday.com. They've also got a really cool radio program. How the heck are you guys?
Hot.
Excellent.
It's hot. You know, we just figured out this year that Missouri goes from like comfortable to miserable in, I don't know, an hour or two.
From cold, uncomfortable to, sinus headache cold to, my head's hurting me because I just went from really hot outside to the air conditioning inside, which is giving me a sinus headache. So it's like I can't have either way.
It's crazy. It's crazy. How are you doing?
Oh, doing great. I mean, talk about hot weather out here in San Antonio. It is so humid. When you go outside, it's like walking into a furnace. It's just ridiculous. So, and it seems like it's gotten a lot more intense the past few years. I've talked about this before on a few programs where even if it's 85 degrees outside, the sun, the actual feeling on your skin just seems to be more intense. But are you guys not from Missouri? Is that why you said you just figured that out? Or
Oh, I did. I've only been here 5 years, 6 years now. But my husband's been here quite a longer time. He was actually born north of where we currently live. It amazes me that there's just such a unusual, because you talk to anybody in the emergency room, police department, when it heats up, people go wacko. And it's like the heat just does something to your brain. It does not function well.
Now, how long have you guys been studying demonology?
Studying it is another thing in itself. If you go back, the resources are really, I'll just say crappy, going to the bookstore and so forth. So I had to rely on other things, not just observation and experiences, from an early age. Well, let's go back to 12 years old, 15. Card to the St. Louis County Library, big library, get lost in it. And one of the St. Louis County libraries, of course, there's more than one. And when I looked up books, for example, I saw the phenomenon of, demonic activity and so forth mixed with what they believe is UFO aliens or old mythology like the old hag and all that stuff. And it was very confusing. You had Hans Holzer. He just wrote all these books, real giant, thick things. It's just a mixed bag of pseudoscience and what we consider multicultural, multi-religion. And, it was a very confusing amount. So I relied more upon resources of the Catholic Church, although a lot of it was trial and error, such as, priests. And we had nuns in the family. I was thinking about being a priest at some point, but I was really into the band Kiss at that time. So, I wanted to be a rock and roller, where I talk about it's like a Twisted Sister video, that in itself. And, there was a bishop in the family, too, who married my mother and father at the cathedral in the church. So I would ask them questions, and I was experiencing paranormal things in my house, and I later found out my sister, at least one of them did. And all my mom did was give me a St. Benedict medal and tell me I'm just having what's called night terrors. It's like when you wake up and you're still dreaming, and but it got very real over time. But the resources came through the church. The bookstores weren't providing, but the convents and Alexian Brothers Hospital was leveled. We got old books from their libraries. Stories of Padre Pio. Padre Pio was talking, and in these books about being at a prison, helping people on death row spiritually, and being visited by black shadows, that terrorized the monks and shook the bars because they weren't happy about their progress, I guess, with the death row inmates. And that was the first time I really read about shadows. There wasn't anything online. There was no internet. I'm 54 now. So,
can I jump in real quick, Kenneth? I just wanted to add to what you're saying. I've actually got a friend that has this shadow being that follows her around, and not only does she see it, but like her sister has seen it several times, and yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, we can address that later if you'd like to readdress that one when we get done with this part.
Sure.
Farah, what about your resources? You come from different kind of culture in the household?
Well, it's not only just different culture, but, coming from a family that basically moved constantly. My father was in the military. we had the opportunity to learn about a lot of different cultures, and we were exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different practices, everything from, ancestry to Buddhism to, Christianity to no Christianity, whatever, a big mix.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say, I didn't even realize, I guess I was studying to find out what demons were, but I started studying back in junior high and high school when, I was really confused as to why, because in humanism, we have all these fabulous ideas that, here, take a pill, your sadness is going to go away. Oh, you've been molested by your boyfriend that you didn't say no to, just go to therapy, you'll work it out. There's all these instant, supposed cures, but they're not really cures. So there had to be something on a spiritual level that was inviting this, not that the victims were asking for it, that they were prone to choices that put them in bad places. So I started looking at, my best friend who was molested by her father for 8 years. I started looking at a couple of people that I went to junior high and high school with in one of the worst parts of the entire United States of America. Don't be offended, because I love Puget Sound. I love the whole area, anybody out there. But because of the amount of rain, the amount of dark days, they have the Love Israel cult, one of the most difficult cults in the entire world to ever deprogram anybody out of. And that's how I got involved in demonology, was looking at all the spiritual effects of everything that I was living around, everything that I saw, and how you add up all the humanistic approaches, and they weren't working. The only thing that could possibly work was something that Ken and I use now.
Yeah.
We use Christian solutions, and they work for us. And if you chase them hard enough, it works quicker. So that's where mine began. Besides having encounters when I was very young, and my mother is an artist. She's not like one of this huggy, touchy feeling kind of go, come here. No, just go tough it out. Just tell it, Jesus is going to go kick its butt. Good night. Go to sleep. Leave me alone, Puts night light in my light in my little bedroom, my little light. I had a Bambi night light. It was so cute. But, it still didn't stop me from seeing things. There was things staring at me at the base of the bed.
Yeah.
So I knew there was always something out there just waiting to get me. But it was getting other people.
First.
Always.
And a lot of people have talked about that old hag syndrome where they wake up with sleep paralysis and they think that this old lady's sitting on them, literally, and sometimes taking their breath and stuff. And so that's kind of like that overall archetype where so many people have seen that same thing. I wonder if it becomes a part of the consciousness, like 100 Monkey Syndrome. You've got many people that claim that they've been abducted by extraterrestrials, and they describe them as little gray men, and they think for sure that they're from another planet. And then I talk to people that say there's no way. They're fallen angels. There's the Nephilim. They're actually demonic. So there's so many different interpretations out there. I wonder if there's really an absolute truth, or if somebody believes it, that is their truth, therefore it's their reality. And it's so fascinating in many aspects. But with the demonology work that you all do, could you walk us through some of the experiences that you've had that have just blown your mind? And you said, wow, I definitely know that the supernatural exists.
When I was in a campsite with a bunch of adults on one side, a bunch of kids on the other side, and this one kid just loved Led Zeppelin. He was probably 4 or 5 years older than us. He decided to slice himself, drain some blood over some candles and some incantations and summon demons. And of course, our tents are kind of like in a circle around this guy and the fire. There's really not a lot of places you can hide. And when everybody thought he was joking, everybody thought he was just being stupid. Whatever happened that night, I crawled in my tent after I heard a guy's really deep guttural voice, and the wind was just like, it was whistling. The adults weren't worried because they were all drinking next to us. But this guy obviously called something. That's not supernatural. That's flippin' demonic. From that moment on, before he committed suicide, he was just absolutely obsessed. He was obsessed with dark black magic. He was obsessed with hurting things, hurting people. His parents could not get control of him. Was that supernatural? Was that demonic? That was definitely preternatural. Whatever it was, he used his blood to conjure. Took him to his grave.
Have you ever heard the song Stairway to Heaven backwards?
No, but I used to really like that song because I was a big, rock head growing up. So never heard it backwards. No. Well, as a matter of fact, my parents, everybody said, oh, you shouldn't listen to that rock and roll stuff. Yeah, but I was out there holding a sign, no nukes and all this other stuff too. So I was a strange kid.
Yeah,
Good for you.
I researched that stuff. That was in the 80s, and they were calling Snowblind by Styx backwards mask too. And this is a little interesting tidbit too. The research I didn't have fully then until I actually heard from the witches that worship Satan. And they actually when you're in the higher, not the dabblers, like the Facebook is filled with the dabblers all over the place. When they get into the higher level, they actually pride themselves on their ability to be able to speak backwards. They think that's like speaking the demonic language. This is one of the reasons why some of the haunted houses will have writings show up on the walls backwards. And the idea there, as I said in my first book, that are we looking at a mirror world beyond us, an actual mirror, and in other words, reverse, because it's light, dark. There's a lot of opposites, extremely opposites. Maybe it was an error in perspective judgment when the lower level demons who write like children, because the ranks vary,
True,
is writing backwards, not to be an anarchist, but actually writing backwards because from their perspective, it's the same as writing forward. And a lot of them, there could be many of them, they usually work in larger numbers then. But the backwards masking thing, getting back to that, I was thinking it was either done because, they were under the influence and, a spirit could be communicating through them. And with the wisdom of the ages, they can come up with something that has a meaning forward and backwards. Or they were purposely doing it because they were more the higher level practitioners of the dark arts. Or it's just someone's imagination like that. What's that called, Farah, whenever you look at clouds and you see faces? That
a pareidolia.
There is that in
where
a
you
certain
see
thing when
faces and
people listen to EVPs, when you get kind of hyped up Christian ministers who are just looking for something in the band Styx. I'm very familiar with them. I really doubt even then that Snowblind, for example, had satanic lyrics. Now, I did play Ronnie James Dio backwards. I think it was Rainbow in the Dark. And I got chilled. There's some really creepy stuff there. It was just too much of a coincidence. I think that I can't remember the Stairway to Heaven one, but I had a lot too that was real creepy. And that was supposedly inspired. He wrote that in 15 minutes. Though it sounds like one of those scenarios I just gave where it was inspired by a spirit rather than his creativity, And that's why it could be done so quick with a meaning backwards and forward. So very possible.
Well, actually, that song that was written, actually, he claims, Mr. Page claims that it was done via automatic writing.
Yeah.
Also done in the same home that Aleister Crowley used to own off of the Loch Ness out there. So now, yeah, this is a true story. They were fascinated with Aleister Crowley and what he did. But one thing that I'm wondering is, it was either done via automatic writing or the people that put that together knew the words, and what they did was they used the technology, like you said, that backwards writing, where they could just add it in the clip and kind of give this woo-woo factor to the work. You know what I mean? Because you guys probably remember the Beatles album that came out where they basically said that Paul McCartney, fake Paul, was killed in a car accident, and there was all that symbology and occultism and stuff. So whether it's legit and they did it to warn people, kind of like their rituals, I guess, in music, or it was something as a marketing ploy, either way, it's genius and it's fascinating. So for those that haven't listened to Stairway to Heaven backwards, you can actually go to YouTube and it'll show you the words and stuff. And it's the exact opposite of what Stairway to Heaven talks about. It's like, you will sell your soul to hell and go.
Isn't that crazy?
That's hilarious. I'm sorry, but it's not funny. But, I truly believe it because I know the way demons work, and I'm sure they all had a good laugh at that.
One thing we don't talk about very often, too, if you're a ghost hunter and you're going and doing an investigation, you're playing back your EVPs, to flip it over if you think you hear something and you can't make it out. Just flip it over in your whatever audio program you're using to add it with. And if you do hear it backwards, that's not a human spirit that's working on the right side, on the light side. Then I'll just put that in there. That's one of the traits. Like I said, negative. That we look for the negative footprints, and that's when we usually find, a spirit working with the demonic spirits, or it is a demonic spirit, one of the fallen angels anyway.
Okay. Now, walk us through some of the encounters that you guys have experienced with demonology more recently.
More recently? Let's see, where do we begin? A possession case, I suppose?
Oh, that'd be good. Okay.
There was a local one, and we don't get a whole lot of possession cases local where we can just drive like 20 minutes away. And initially when we went there for the interview, we just tried to do it very formally. We do, go there like police investigators, and not freak them out on any preconceived notions. We go listen to the story and walk and get a feel for the house and the people. Had a recorder running.
Well, this is because, Ken got tired of me walking into houses and opening my mouth like Donald Sutherland in Body Snatchers and going, "Ooh!" He didn't think that was funny. He has no sense of humor.
Nice.
I know. You gotta laugh. Seriously,
we just interviewed
it's bad.
him,
It's really bad out there.
The subject came, the person who was afflicted. We asked that, have them distracted so they don't come home, and we can get the house cleansed. We want to start with a clean slate, and it'll give us more of an idea, person, place, or thing. Could we narrow it down to something an investigator or an author who was going to be reporting, who, what, where, when, why, and how. We want all those questions answered. So we did all of that. We're sitting on the porch, and she came home, and she was sitting on another chair. She's about, I don't know, about 148 pounds, I guess. She's about 5
she's
foot.
not even 148. She's a bitty thing.
Yeah.
You're thinking about maybe her mom. She might weigh maybe 100 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, she's short.
Maybe 110. She's just a bitty little thing.
Well, I'm not going to say short. That's where I'll be politically correct. Yeah, just like short from what perspective? Yeah, so I'm 6'2". I don't want to be, so you're tall. Would you grab that thing on the top of the shelf? I heard that a lot when I was younger. I was like, I didn't think of myself as tall.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're on the porch and she's just lighting up a cigarette. She didn't act as uncomfortable as the one that we had about 3 weeks before, another possession case, when she came into the house under the same circumstances. We had just cleansed the house in this other case. And the look on her face stopping right where the frankincense.
She could not walk through the incense that you lit. She was just like, ugh.
She had this look on her face like, what's my ex doing here? Like that, if you could see
like her
face.
head was going to pop off her body. She's just like, wow.
Yeah, that was a different case.
That was weird.
Do you guys get video footage of this stuff?
No.
No, we're
Catholic. Sorry, we don't do it because we're there to help them and get clear. We're not there to go, hey, you guys, come on, let's throw back some tequila, lime, and I got a 6-pack. Let's watch this.
Yeah, we turned over to
can't
church
do that.
anyway. And,
There's plenty of YouTube videos out there. People want to watch them, but nah, I can't do it.
Can I ask just a quick question
Sure.
about that? Okay, because the only reason I brought that up is I don't mean in reference to, okay, let's record this horrific event and then let's all go, have beer bongs and party. It's more like maybe if you could do it if the people gave you permission that had you go in there or something to just kind of scientifically, you could break that down. You could say, okay, look, she's twisting her head like this and there's that specific frankincense incense that's stopping her moving. So maybe people could take that and use it for the next opportunity or something to, so not release it to the entire world, but maybe specific people that want to help others.
of course, yeah, then we'll have that. But
we only do that, though, if there's two things, okay? One, we're getting a heavy-duty exorcist involved, which means, this is going to be like a 4 or 5 day to 4 or 5 month project. Two, the whole family's behind the person, and the person is definitely willing to do the work because people that are possessed that have to go through ritual exorcism, they're part of the process. You just don't go wave a magic wand or make some holy water on their forehead and it's like all done and good. So that's the only reason that we would basically record.
Okay.
So it could be viewed later.
Yeah, the good thing about where we're at right now, at least at this diocese, and they if you tell them where you're with, who you work with and stuff, and they'll give you credit at the other ones on the other coast, and is that we don't need so much physical evidence. We give an analysis of a very careful balance of mental versus spiritual. And lately, it's been more mental, not those cases that we're going to finish talking about. But
yeah.
And so so far, we haven't had a difficulty in recording something. We recorded for legal reasons, and I observed later this last case that we wanted, not the last case before that. We recorded everything just because we weren't sure about it, and we wanted to give an analysis on it later from having other people look at it or us reevaluating it. Because when I'm in the moment of testing the spirits, so to speak, without them knowing, I can't see their face if I'm behind them. That's part of it. So besides personal observations, that they're limited to the local, team, the one that's on site. We might need to use it later on, but for the most part, the church has, because of where we're at and being recognized, has been good for saying, okay, so do you think that this is demonic possession? And no, we don't. And they will go along with that. So. But we don't want to take it for granted. So we for legal purposes, we'll record as needed. But other than that, and we always have audio.
Okay.
It's just that until an interaction's done, we won't get video. Like unless we want to observe the possession, or we were basically backed into a corner and have to do a deliverance, which is just local case that we're talking about. When she was lighting up a cigarette, the gal who's about 5 foot we're talking about, and I couldn't tell. I don't know her. And they said she's not herself today. And that's not enough. So I get a call from my our son asking me how to
at
make
the
a
right
peanut butter
time.
sandwich.
At the right time.
So I disappear.
And all of a
around
sudden she starts thrashing and bucking and spitting and throwing two, like, what is he? Dad's like about 270
yeah,
maybe.
he's about 275.
And
yeah.
What's the uncle? He's like about 350, almost 400.
probably,
and
yeah.
Mom and another guy, and she's bucking them all off like a bucking bronco. And I'm like, I'm getting the prayers and the holy water. I'm like waving at Ken, and Ken is just walking back and forth in front of the house talking talking to his son like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
And she's spitting and trying to bite, and her eyes are rolling back in her head. She's speaking in third person. I'm like, oh, have mercy, Lord, would he please
and
get
cursing
off
and all that
her?
stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
Nothing
but
provoked it either.
that's,
It was just,
that's how it happens, though. It
Yeah.
happens right when you're not looking.
Now
It's
we
like,
got to be
boom.
ready for that. And so I
Last
brought
time
all
that
my
happened.
stuff in case I needed to do it, but we were there for an initial interview and analysis. So we ended up doing, a deliverance. I don't want to say exorcism because in the church the term is used when the minor or major rite is done. Now I do, samples of various prayers, but then you end up just hitting them with the holy water and holding the Benedict crucifix and so forth, just to try to clear the spirit out for that moment at least. Well, about 20 minutes later, she let out a breath and she started crying like a little girl and said, "Daddy." And then, he says, "I'm here." And then, he hugged her. She's 46.
Yeah, 46.
She's 46 years old.
46, and her voice went from a guttural, angry man cussing and biting and spitting and, screaming, at Ken and I that you can't have her, on and on and on and on, to just a little tiny girl saying, "Oh, Daddy." A really, really high pitch, just so sad. Now, the sad thing is that mental illness is very similar to demonic possession fits. Mental illness can mimic it. That's why there's so many things that we have to take into consideration before we call something, yeah, she's got a problem. We always assume she doesn't. She could use medication. Somebody could use, maybe some more sessions in therapy. Somebody could use, a closer relationship with their God before we ever say, yeah, you got boogeties on you. Gonna have to beat them off.
This one was an odd one too, and it was good. It was only about 15 minutes across town with not too many stoplights because we were watching a movie Saturday night, and about 11 o'clock we get a call, said that she's talking to. We had absolute proof that you blessed the four corners of property, not taking a bucket of salt and then drawing it around there. Just do the four corners with holy water. That it keeps the spirit out. The spirit, it was the second time in that same case where the spirit was seen, not on the property, but outside the parameters of their marked property, the four corners. This time she was talking to something across the street, and they saw it in a black, shadowy mass thing. So they brought her back in the porch, and she started, we'll just say, going under, the possession episode. So they call us over there. We went over there, and she was a bit subdued at first. And I said, well, they showed me a picture, and it looked just like the classic, how the upper part of the body of the of Slimer, and you see some of the Grim Reapers look like that. It looked exactly like the torso of a Grim Reaper with the long arms, the skull face, perfect. Not this kind of thing when people put monkey faces up and say it's a demon, monkey-looking faces and that shapes and fog. It was darker than the picture, so you had to adjust the contrast. And it was 11 o'clock at night near a street light, not close enough to be lit up in that area. And you could see it very clear. It was looking, it was like looking at an angle of deep, dark eye sockets, artistically perfect. Just taking a picture. You can see the car still across the street that was on the far right. Well, we go across the street, and I bring the sheriff's deputy with me. That was her father, Christian County Sheriff's deputy, and had him hold stuff. And I said, we're going to go run it off. So we went across the street, and I didn't see anything where it was originally. So we went around this clearing, and I'm looking, and I'm going, is that it? And then he goes, oh, there it is. That's what the sheriff said. So here this thing is, this kind of like bubbly, smoky thing. Like, picture this 700-pound man who has a cloak on that's being blown by a fan, a black cloak, and he's bent over as if to try to hide from us, with his legs just bending down. And that's what it looked like. And we just started throwing, he held a frankincense and myrrh, I held the cross up, I threw holy water on it. It took about 3 minutes, and then it finally just kind of faded out. Though it was probably the leader, we'll just say the highest. They're always led by a hierarchy. No effects from it in a negative way, because we always come prepped. If you ever hear about someone saying, "Oh, I got hit as if I got hit by a 2x4," means you either shouldn't be doing the work or you're not prepped. You might have been caught off guard. You can't live the life of a single person if you're single and doing this. You have to live life more like a monk, not by yourself, but being chased and all that stuff, or you will be affected. Even illnesses, people getting cancer, fibromyalgia, different. You get sick on sight. Sometimes people just have a reaction like you do if you saw dead bodies on a scene. That's not the same sickness I'm talking about. But that was, one of the strangest encounters, because usually I don't have a second person with me fighting this battle. I mean, with some big shadow Hulk in that matter. Someone who's not trained in that sort of thing. So we since then have been training him to participate in our team. And it's nice to have the perspective of a police officer who recognizes drugs we're trying to determine if it's mental or spiritual anyway. So, and he's brave,
I would think that for some people that are really into drugs, and there's probably a lot of stuff that isn't physical that would latch onto their body, their spiritual essence, etc., to kind of feed off of it. And, I've even brought up before, if I ever had a cold in the past, I would almost feel like there was something else there, like this, dark type energy, almost like a parasite feeding off of it or something like that. And whether that's just in my head because of the way that I'm physically feeling and I'm just trying to understand it, subconsciously and tapping into that, I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't see because we are so limited with what we can actually visualize with our light spectrum. So now, how many cases do you guys actually go out and get firsthand encounters with? That's incredible.
Anytime we can. And right now, this restriction is more on that we have 2 young kids. Well, 15-year-old, they have autism, higher functioning. They have higher 150 IQ.
Right. Brilliant.
But it just really limits. We're still not sure about him watching the 9-year-old girl in a sense that,
he's a typical guy. It's like, okay, give me food, give me whatever, and leave me alone. Okay, I'm in my nothing box.
Right.
Yeah. So he's immature in some ways and mature in another. I guess is probably.
Oh yeah. He can build a cart in like 2 hours. But
when we do lectures and help, we do them for free, of course. But we're a very low income household in the sense that we don't never have money set aside to say that we can.
Oh yeah, I can fly over to Ireland anytime. So yeah. That's not low income. That just means we're challenged travel wise.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So and the lecture is the same thing. They will go and speak a place for free. I would feel bad if someone got $500 to do a lecture and we didn't get paid anything and we came over for free and everything. That wouldn't feel right. But still, that's what we offer, and it's the same thing. It's lodging and travel, and when it doesn't cost us anything. Right. We hold our money for our ministry, our family, and stamps. We mail out a lot of stuff, before we get there.
We basically help people all over the world. We send out all kinds of packages, and we have a lot of connections in various countries, even foreign-speaking ones such as Spain and Italy. Canada's not so foreign, Mexico and Japan. And we can hook people up with networks. And that's usually how we operate best, unless we have the opportunity, like we had to handle 2 deliverances in another state that people had come from 5 states away to see us because we happen to be guest lecturing, which, that is a lot easier for us. Or what we're doing now is when people have issues, we're telling them, all right, you need deliverance prayers. You're serious about taking care of this thing. Come here. So we have people travel here to us where we can take care of them on our own home turf. And that's a lot easier. It makes much more sense because when you think about it, when you're in a war zone, are you going to bring like mom, hey mom, come on over here and have a cup of tea and sit in the war zone and almost get shot with me? No, you want to feel safe and you want to go have a cup of tea with your mom. You leave the war zone and you go to your mom's and you have a cup of tea and everything's all right. That's all there is to it. That's what we explain to people that, a removal from the direct incidents and potentially point of origin will get them seeing and thinking objectively.
It's amazing how many cases can be solved with proper counseling, giving them advice, prayers, medals. And one of the big examples is, you said something about it earlier, and maybe before the show, the sleep paralysis thing, and curses in particular, seem to get a lot of those. The hardships and misfortunes are pouring in, and they name the things off, the incidences and the time frame, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound like the unluckiest guy in the world, and this has only been going on in 3 weeks? Now, what happened 3 weeks ago? Oh, I went on this haunted investigation. We paid to stay up late at night, and I said, do you think that was it? And they say yes. And I say, why? And they'll tell me some details. But we give prayers, and they say for 9 days. There's one case we had a guy who believed he had a Filipino curse, which is a little bit like, without going into detail, like Santeria a bit. Came from an ex-girlfriend, and he's had it for quite some time. He had his shakes and some other symptoms that I can't recall. I don't want to get that confused with the other one, but that I was thinking of. And he got instructions prior to the time that we went over there. And I gave him some prayers. I said, do this prayer, breaking curses prayers for 9 days. I sent him a St. Benedict medal. And he started it. So by the time we got with him, and we were going to pray over him and do other things and do a more formal in-person investigation about this, by then he said, I'm on my 9th day. And I got up this morning, and this black spot on my lip that I was going to the doctor for cancer, was causing his lip to swell up. He said it's been there a long time and growing little by little. It fell off And that's not a surprise to us because illnesses, hardships, and misfortunes, I know you lose a job, you're not going to get it back necessarily, will suddenly stop. A series of things breaking down around the house, computers and car tires going flat and brake lines getting pricked. And of course, the other one, as I was saying, was sleep paralysis at St. Benedict Medal, proper prayers, and sometimes just blessing your room with holy water. Had to listen to the severity and how it's manifesting itself, if I can see anything yet. We've been able to help people help right over the phone. And we don't do Skype deliverances or phone deliverances or anything like that. If I had to, and there's no other way, even the Vatican exorcist said he did an exorcism over the phone. You do what you have to do. But most of the time, God helps those who help themselves, indeed. But they need the right tools and the right direction, in the advice that we give. So it's kind of a consultation almost more than it is advising in a lot of ways, when they help themselves in that way.
Mm-hmm. And have you guys ever noticed before when there's been certain cases of possession or demonic activity that there were like different smells? Like sulfur, anything, or just like morbid?
Have you ever been to like you're out that way? I used to repo cars out in Phoenix, just outside of Phoenix.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Oh, it really, really was. Getting shot in the load.
Watch out for that guy who's got an AR-15.
Exactly. AR-15s were not so popular then. But there are certain areas, there's mud bogs all over the United States. And the smell is it's like dead stuff. It's fetid. It's rotten. It's worse than like if you take an egg in a jar and bury it and pull it out and say, "Here, Dad, get a whiff of this." It's bad. Yeah. It smells bad. That's
okay.
Mildly, dear.
Huh. Now, and also, when you've been to some of these places, have you noticed like stuff would fly from one point to the other? Things would fall off shelves, shaking, anything like that?
No, that's really a lot of the hype that's presented on a lot of paranormal shows and supernatural shows, that this sort of energy, that takes an incredibly powerful demon. And by the time you've irritated a demon to that point, there is only one solution. And that's everybody's got to stop whatever kind of practice they're doing and basically turn to some serious solutions at work. That kind of thing does happen, but it's so rare. It's not even important to talk about. Like I said, it takes a really strong demon to drop stuff as we're walking by walls. And it happens incredibly rarely.
Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Lesser Keys of Solomon, but it's a book that has actually 72 sigils that are linked to different demons of different principalities. And the history of that book is supposedly Solomon used these demons to create the temple and do his bidding. And some people that study the occult and the mystery schools say that we already are connected to all those demons. They're just a part of our mind and reflections of ourselves. And then some people look at them as outer sources. So, and you can get into the whole quantum physics theory and science behind it, but it's just a lot to grasp. And what is your take on that book and the principalities discussed?
I got lots to say, so go for it.
I remember someone approached me in 2006 and said, I'm using this ritual, or it was called the Lesser Spell of Binding. And it talked about the angel of the east, west, south, and north. And I'm like, this is a witchcraft thing, substituting angel names, angel, archangel, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Ariel. And, even with the elements, they're making Michael the, almost like in place of the element of fire. So they do this a lot in the occult and so forth. It's like angelology, an angel board is still a Ouija board. Therefore, an evil spirit is going to be more likely to communicate on it. And such rare cases, can't even think off the top of my head where it was supposed to be good, because they can pretend to be good just to hook you in, even give you information or advice that's true, but it doesn't mean it's a good spirit. That's the sign, as they say, the biblical definition of a false prophet, that you can get 99% truth, and that 1% untruth is the one that hooks you. The Lesser Keys of Solomon, I've been hearing that for years. I call them Solomonites. I actually put them in a classification of demonologists that's actually on the polar opposite, because they mix necromancy and the darker forms of the occult, where even Wicca is lighter, much lighter by any means, because it's not directly calling up demonic spirits. Yeah, that's a mythology, and I think that Crowley and so forth, and even the Freemasons. This idea, Solomon was the one who was more cursed than David. David lusted after Bathsheba. They had a child together with this married woman. It's adultery. And then he arranged that Uriah, her husband, in order to hide the fact that she got pregnant by him, would be murdered, in war by sending him to the equivalent of the Russian front, in World War II. And it indeed killed him. Well, God, punished him in one way. The child was born and died. If it wasn't stillborn. Solomon, he was told that your son is going to build a temple. So they're not even settled into the point where they got the temple built yet. He's got plans out for it, but he's told by God, no, you won't be building the temple. That meant a lot to him. So it got sent to his son Solomon. Now, the way you look at it is this. He said that Solomon was going to build a temple. Why would God's essence used to pour over and hover over the tent when the when they were left, the Jews left Egypt, and they would erect a tent and they'd put the Ark of the Covenant under it. You would see, in the valley or anywhere you look, it's like, what is this strange mist, this cloud? It's thick. It's not even a mist. And that would be over the temple. That was like temple of the tent. Like it was as though a makeshift temple, because the essence of God would hover over it. The same thing happened with the temple. Solomon built it. Now, we know how the polar opposites work. God never wants to participate in anything that, remember, lead us not into temptation in the Our Father. We're never going to find signs of good masquerading as evil for any purpose whatsoever, or good collaborating with evil. The only thing we do find is that sometimes he knows the nature of the beast, and he knows that can actually bring his will. And that's the only way he has to work, because when some things return so far, the only thing you can do is just redirect the course of evil to get it to follow his will and his plan, because the evil is set on its ways. Defiled hands of demonic spirits directed by Solomon building a temple at that early stage, but that was before he fell, is also out of the timeline. And it's not in a theological sense. I would say logical too, but the theological sense of having demons build something that he was entrusted to. And then you have the Masons saying that, they're the Freemasons saying that their descendants, or, where they follow this order of stonemasons who built the original temple, instead of demons. It's not like they're all demons, but none of I think it's just some sort of thing when, Crowley and some of these others enhanced it. And it might have gone back far enough to be, as old as the Dead Sea Scrolls. We know there's a lot of Gnostic writing out there, but it is definitely more than just like neo-Christian. I don't see any elements of Christianity there. When I read that prayer, the spell of lesser banishment, it had no names and no commands in there that I know are effective. It sounded like a conjuring prayer, whatever, manipulated to replace demon names with angelic names, and it'll work in just the same manner, because you got your order out of priority. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but we've seen the name of Jesus work, and no other name works in that way. And that's not even me speaking from a Catholic point of view. That's from speaking from cause and effect. Scientists love that we see the way Jesus' name is going to affect these things. And what's funny about that thing is someone will put this alien stuff up, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but there's so many encounters, and when they get up close and personal, that people are thinking are aliens. Even this one woman who shouldn't believe in God, so they appear as whoever or whatever would better enter your bedroom and be accepted. A child, a lost dead relative, but they're causing sleep paralysis. In the old days, the vampire lore was more accepted. Someone died in a village and they saw a creepy shadow around there. So, you come up with these things like pinning the body inside the casket, but they attributed the vampire lore and attacks in the same way that they did the old hags later on, or now it's the UFO, well, for a while, at least since Betty and Barney Hill, perhaps, the UFO alien abduction, close encounters of the fourth kind, or something along that lines. But the fact is that when we advise people about those things, we gave them the same tools they use if they were being demonically paralyzed. And it works on the aliens too. And I said, what do you think that is? And they said, I'm not sure. And I said, you think they were forced to go to church when they were little alien kids and they don't like church? It wouldn't work. That's cause and effect. You turn on light, there goes the, shadows go flying under the bed and into the closet or whatever, or disappearing. They don't like daylight like vampires don't. A little bit of cross mixed in the lures, like I was saying with the old textbooks that were out there. They weren't textbooks. They were just, writings that were available in the 70s and even into the 80s.
Right. And it's interesting because the universe is so big, at least according to the data that we're given, and I can speculate on that all day long, but if the universe is as large as we're told, or even close to it, then it would literally be mathematically impossible for there not to be other planets with this same type of atmosphere, etc., in some other place. But with that said, it doesn't necessarily need to be that there's other people there. But do you guys think that there are other people just like us on other planets, or think that all the ET activity that people explain, because I've heard everything from elephant heads with human bodies to little leprechauns to, reptilian shapeshifters to mantis aliens to little grays to Nordics, Pleiadians, Sayrays, everything under the sun. Could it all just be a part of our imagination? Or like you said, you feel it's demonic forces that change their shape to be more accepted to people. But do you guys think there's any possibility there being life on other planets?
Well, I guess that's true. I think they would be humanoid. But all the encounters, it's like you always look for the kind of the plain and obvious science. And you always notice it's always supernatural and how to experience it. And I wrote some article a long time ago about the parallels of UFO alien encounters. And, this was before people were talking about it. I wish I would have wrote books way back then. I didn't realize there was nothing out there so much. And it was hard to write on a typewriter. It was before the Apple IIe, and that was a pretty expensive computer, and I couldn't afford that. And I didn't even have a Commodore VIC-20,
Right.
Because that wasn't good for word processing. I'd just give anything to have a word processor. But on that level, humanoids, I just don't know if I've really seen any proof because there's too many parallels of demonic spirits. It's 3 a.m., like I said, the sleep paralysis. Why would you feel evil if demonic spirits in the room? Feeling a presence is one thing. It sounds more reminiscent. To also find out they also have the symptoms of a haunting present instead of it just being isolated attack like I saw a bright light in the sky. Then we find out the X-Files had some things right too. The way Satanists will drug people, and you'll see all sorts of strange things because one of the hallucinogens, whatever, you can be highly suggestive like you do when you're under sodium pentothal. Is that the name, Farah? Farah's my...
Yes.
And
I'm talking about that CIA pixie dust.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can suggest what they've seen. So if someone was abducted for, even government experiments or something, that you can get them to see whatever they do. And what's the easiest one to blow off? UFO alien abductions. So we've had people who went through satanic ritual abuse, who all the elements were there, everything, including the relatives. And then you go, okay, so this is pointing to not being a UFO alien abduction. And our friend Michael Norton on the West Coast had one of those come up lately. We look for the elements and the footprints of the demonic spirit because we can't easily prove, UFO alien and that sort of thing. And we're surprising how many levels we find it. That if it was a police investigation, it would go to court and be open and shut. UFO alien, zero, demonic, you're going to jail.
Well, I think the rhetorical question, though, it bears merit. If you think about, our own Christian faith, basically our universe, our place that we hang out right here was spoken into being. All right. So if you look at some of the greatest minds, all of our philosophers, especially the ones that we follow, Aristotle and Augustinian, God's a creator. He doesn't stop creating. So are there other worlds out there? I think there are probably a lot of other Earths out there. Can we talk to them and get in touch with them? Probably not. Why? Probably because the same stuff that's going on in our world here is probably going on over there. Is there a possibility? I mean, I was a big fan of strand theory when it first came out, this whole string fabric thing, we're all interconnected and there's like cool wormholes we can travel. Love to do it, but never seen any evidence of it, not on this planet. And I've actually visited quite a few places where the Earth's natural gravitational pull doesn't work.
Right, like out in South Dakota?
Yeah, laws of physics don't apply. Does that mean that there's aliens living underneath the Earth? Probably not. But I do think that, God created a bunch of other beings. And the fact that he created these fabulous immortal creatures that plague the hell out of us and other ones that are supposed to watch over us. I mean, it's enough of a battlefield just trying to keep up with them, much less what else could be out there.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I like some of the things like Gallagher said one time. He said, that's why the UFO aliens aren't landing, because we're so stupid. It's like
I love Gallagher. We got the Smash-O-Matic.
I know. I love Smashing Pumpkins.
But that made sense to me in the 80s.
Pumpkins, I mean watermelons.
Smashing Pumpkins, all that too. I think he does a pumpkin in there.
Yeah, he did a pumpkin once.
Yeah, they splatter a lot, Gallagher. So that's the point of it.
Gallagher.
Now, so let's ask this then. With these encounters that you guys have experienced, and it really sounds like it solidifies your belief system more, are you guys worried about the future of the Catholic faith and the Vatican? And there's just so many different... I mean, the internet's like a bathroom wall. Don't get me wrong. You can write anything.
You got that right. It's better than a bathroom wall because it changes on a daily basis.
It is. And also with the algorithms and the people that really control the companies that control those and the keywords, meta tags, etc., you really have to take everything with a grain of salt.
Yes.
But what do you guys think about the Vatican having this multi-million-dollar telescope and naming it Lucifer?
Well, if you think about it, the earliest writings of the Angel of Light, his name was Lucifer. He was the most beautiful angel created. What do I think about it? That's kind of strange, but you know what?
I'm not even sure if that's true.
Yeah, I don't know.
It
I guess you'd have to look it up.
News or one of
who
those.
knows?
Huh?
I mean, that they called it Lucifer. They've had the Vatican telescope for a long time. I don't know, maybe 60s, a bigger version of it. But I didn't know they nicknamed it Lucifer. And I guess I always double check on these sources.
And even the name Lucifer. Somebody can say it's the light bearer. Somebody I've talked to before, Gerald Clark. He's very knowledgeable on many things as far as the Sumerian tablets and translations. And his thought on Lucifer, that actual term, isn't in representation of the devil or Satan, but of actually an archetype of enlightenment or of a light bearer, if you break that name down in Latin. So it's just, there's so much confusion out there. Like you were talking about these satanic rituals, and you brought up the way that there's these certain chemicals and influence that can be done over people that think it's an actual ET, when in reality it's just a human being that's doing something really bad, so they're trying to cover it up. And MK Ultra and the mind control programming, they've really mastered those techniques. And I wonder, could it be all of the above? Could it be not only there's abductions that happen here, My Labs type stuff where they pretend to be ETs and force the blame on something else, but could there also be other influences? I don't know. I mean, I'm agnostic on all that. I can't prove any of it. So that's why I'm searching for the truth, and that's what we do here at the Leak Project, but I certainly don't claim to have the answers. That's why it's just great to speak with people like yourselves that have actually been to these places, felt the emotions, saw what people did, and you can express that information to us, so I really appreciate it. Now, and also with that said, have there been times before where you've been in certain rooms or in situations where you're helping these people get out of their possession and it just scared the hell out of you, and you just, pardon my language, but you just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge and say, wow, let's go get a couple priests, bring them in here, and let's fix this thing?
Yeah,
Yes. If only it were that easy.
The Vatican telescope, that's the nickname, not the church gave it, but because it's actually grouped used, it's in other words, other groups come in and use it. They actually were the ones to give it some sort of human nickname of Lucifer, but it wasn't named that by the church
Lucifer,
Vatican
actually
officials.
broken down in Aramaic, is actually the light of the air. He's actually the prince of the air, and he is the highest bad boy, and Satan's under him.
Yeah, we always watch for
Their
this
ranks-
stuff too,
their
because
ranks of
we have to be ready
ugliness.
to answer it, because we are a bit, on the Catholic apologetics side too. Even kind of trying to clean up for the Pope's quotes and taking out of context things, and it's just a matter of a part of being Catholic. In addition, I even know it's different than demonology in a way, but we might expect false things to be out there, which
And
is
that's
part of the
okay
diabolical
too. I mean,
world.
everybody's confused. I mean, there's
Yeah.
stuff we're confused about. We got to
Yeah,
look
confused.
up. So
Yeah, too.
yeah,
This good old confusion.
it's nothing new.
It's the divide and conquer, give so much information at one time. You have to shift through all the nasty stuff and just find those hidden gems. And really what resonates with people, I think your gut instinct is usually one of the best forms of,
It really is.
yeah, absolutely.
If it sounds like truth, it probably is. But see, this is where demons come into play, Rex. Demons, all right, depending on your, shall we say, your moral temperature, whether you choose to be a good person or a bad person. If you choose things that are not exactly serving your neighbor, serving their interests, serving other people, chances are demons don't have to bother you because they're already listening to you if that's your choice in life. And they can skew whatever you're hearing. And I think that's why we have so many people believe that, Hillary doesn't have a second server, if I can say that. But it's just like everybody has their own interpretation of what they hear. And what their life choices are determine who they listen to. It's like that old Indian proverb, there's two wolves that live inside of me. One's a ravishing beast and the other one is a calm, loving, peaceful creature. And which one gets bigger? The one that you feed.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because anybody who has some supposed gift or not is going to be more directed and influenced, including temptation. You're going to be more easily tempted and directed to the wrong people, to the wrong husband or wife, to say alcoholism, and self-destructive bad habits. But if you're really leading a better life and you're more in the light, so to speak, on your spirituality and all that, the darkness will have more of a difficulty penetrating it and influencing you, like the Star Wars dark side, that the dark side has more power.
Luke.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's sometimes that's a good metaphor for a lot of things too.
It is. So, I mean, what has all this stuff taught you guys? I mean, do you live differently now? Are you nervous about the other side? Do you feel more comfort?
Remember that thing in the Bible where it was talking the a couple of the apostles were talking amongst themselves right after they healed a man, and he got up off his pallet and started walking. Holy smokes! It was like, can you believe that? It was like after a hockey game, and you're talking about the winning goal you did and all that stuff. It wasn't so much done with pride. I think they were just totally amazed because internally they were lacked self-confidence. Peter remembers walking on water and then thinking for a minute, wow, I'm actually walking on water. What if I drown? And then he starts to sink. So it was a lesson. It was a training ground. But in the same circumstances, Peter struggling with his fear, and his self-doubt and whatever, successfully did it using the name of Jesus. Jesus was gone already. This is Acts. And in the same way, we are just amazed by what is done. No harm comes to us. But we do have to follow our battery of religious practices. And it's working for us. I've told people it's not I don't even know if to call it formula. It's just a daily. And if I ask somebody who says, I'm a demonologist, I'll say, what do you do? What's your daily practices? We still look for people that we want to refer cases to, add to kind of a team that's not officially posted, that's around the world and so forth. And we find so few. They'll say something like, well, I pray to God every morning. And I pray. And I'm like, oh, no, what do you really do? They don't give me the right answers. I know right away they're full of it. There's so many people calling themselves demonologists out there, and they don't last long. About 5 years from now, they'll have a gross, deformity growing on their shoulder in the form of a tumor. They'll have fibromyalgia. They'll end up with cancer. They'll have migraines, that just won't quit. And, they'll be taken out one way or another. The relationships, their jobs, their house, all of this stuff. Their kids can end up with self-destruct. It'll totally destroy their household too, not just them. This is what happens when people just don't follow along with that. But it's amazing how much God has done to work through us and through the ministry. And it's just because we're just trying our best to, follow that path.
Help people get out of dark spots that they might have fallen into and they just don't know how to get out. And you ask, are we comfortable? Are we doing anything different? I think definitely a lot different. I'm not getting in bar fights and, the poster child for sluts
now you're fighting demons.
Yeah, now exactly. We just, we have different priorities. And, sometimes it takes being in a very, very dark place to be able to help another person get out of a very, very dark place.
That's true. I had a heavy metal band once, so we have our past. But yeah.
You had a heavy metal band?
Yeah.
What was the name of it? That's awesome.
See, not the original Alias or anything like that. Alias, I had Metropolis, Mr. Sinister, Felony, about 5 or 6 side effects. Some were short-lived because I didn't like them. But yeah,
I love the names.
Yeah, thanks. It was the hair bands.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you wear the spandex and everything?
I didn't do the spandex like some other guys did. But yeah, a whole 9 yards because MTV was big then, and so we'd fill up the largest venues, and that was exclusively the way I made money for a little bit. And of course, you end up being single longer when you had that lifestyle, and it died out. Yeah, 90s, and I got bored and just started doing more songwriting.
That's really cool. So you said with MTV, I mean, talk about belly of the beast. In my opinion, it seems like MTV is, well, now what's your take on all these actors and movie stars, entertainers that say, literally, they come out and, oh yeah, well, one night I was in my room and I was like, I want to be famous, so what do I do? Well, hey, I got an idea. I'm going to sell my soul. And they brag about it. And what's your take on that? Do you think that that's just a marketing ploy, or do you think that they really do it?
I'm surprised they admit it.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that admit it, I would kind of highly doubt that they have a clue what a devil is. Because like I said, if you're already running with him, he really doesn't care about you because you're already doing exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
Well, one of the, Led Zeppelin, I can't remember if it was Robert Plant or Jimmy Page, but they came out and said they sold their soul.
Yeah, Jimmy Page did. Our friend Deb Johnson is not herself living proof, but I don't want to relay her story so much, but just in a short, her son wanted to be a guitarist. He was just totally into Jimmy Page.
He couldn't play. He was like tone deaf. Okay.
Yeah, and he went to Aleister Crowley's castle, and just like almost overnight, Deb said he became a phenomenal guitar player. And
then it was in a short period of time, like a few months.
Yeah, and that's not possible, especially when you were so bad to start up with. And so she suspected something, but you don't want to think of that. You look
especially when it's your kid.
But he did have an obsession over Jimmy Page and went to Aleister Crowley's castle and started hanging out with them. Well, in the last days,
where's his castle at? I didn't.
That's in
Scotland.
Scotland, that's it.
What's the name of it? It isn't the Dunluce Castle, is it?
Oh, I don't remember the name of the castle though. You can look it up just as fast as us.
Okay. I thought you might know off the top of your head. No problem.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but it's a sad and tragic but real case. And now I think about this more because hearing Deb's case, I actually forgot about this. I've heard about it for years, suspecting anybody in any walk of life, even a singer. Certainly not Axl Rose. He was burning out his throat like every other week. I mean, obviously, if you had some sort of gift from the devil or whatever, you wouldn't be like burning it out, just like you wouldn't, your fingers would just give out all of a sudden. But this, Deb's case is, he ended up dying of drug overdose, just like Hendrix and some others did tragically to Doors lead singer. Some girl gave him some drugs and it killed him. And he didn't wake up. And she didn't report it. He slept in. I think they happened to Bruce Lee, too, in a way. Gave him some headache pills, and he doesn't wake up, and you're going to wake him up, and they're dead, that kind of thing. But he actually was in Nashville. He wrote a song for Pam Tillis, I think her name was. I'm not a country fan, obviously. I like some, but I don't have any. And he was going to actually appear on the Country Music Awards. I think he did, and they were up for a Video Music Award and a Music Award and so forth. Well, he died. It was over. And I don't have the details on that. But, that's a sad example. Everybody knows about the Blues, the Crossroads story. They had a movie with the Karate Kid and whatever his name was, Ralph Macchio.
Okay.
Why, that old story, Crossroads, like that couldn't have been because he didn't use that. But what I'm getting to is it does seem. Here's a good example. Sister Magdalena of the Cross is a Catholic tale of a nun who began as a 5-year-old who wanted to just be so standoutish holy that she made a deal with the devil at the age of 5. And she didn't get discovered until she was in her 50s. It was like the contract expired, and there it is, you're discovered. And she couldn't even receive communion. And so what you do when she's standing in line, this tells you about the significant power of communion without using it as part of, provocation and so forth that the exorcists talk about. That she would fall backwards and go into an ecstasy, and then hosts would magically appear in her tongue. She didn't take it from the priest. Well, it turns out later on, many, 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 many years later, that they found a footlocker of unconsecrated host under her bed, and that she confessed to inquisitors, or it's a different type of thing, that a demon taught her how to do this kind of illusion that it's appearing on her tongue. And so that was to avoid receiving communion, so she wouldn't really fall down and go into some tizzy because of the demon having a fit that's possessing her to giving her all these other abilities. So she faked being a saint, a living saint in this world like a rock star. She was like a rock star of the, kind of like Padre Pio was, but I mean, not like that because there wasn't anything strange with Padre Pio like that. But that just goes to show in any walk of life, you can make a deal with the devil, but don't do it. He'll call it just like that George Burns movie, when he comes to pull it. And that's the sad thing about Satanism too. They think they can get better contracts through Satanism than they can if you just make a private deal with the devil, or the devil will just go, I didn't say 40 years. I said 40 days. When I finally done the contract, you didn't read the fine print. Well, in Satanism, it's like they find ways to try to extend this stuff as much as possible. And they still, it's on the premise that they're going to go to some sort of a, satanic wonderland that they think is some sort of personal paradise to party up and party on, day and night. But the illusions is always going to be there as a lure. Besides in this earth,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could ask about the question with when you have these abduction cases, I've heard of people saying the name Jesus and then the aliens go away, or the demons, or whatever they are. And I've also heard that the name Jesus wasn't even the original name of that person. It was like Joshua or something. And then there's the information that I've read about how J wasn't even a letter back when Jesus existed. So, I mean, I don't know what to believe.
It was translated to Jesus. The name was Yeshua.
Okay.
That's
what I heard. But so,
and that's Aramaic. And so they basically cast out demons in the name of Yeshua Dinsare. So that was how it began, that, the name and the coming meant so much. And I myself have studied quite a bit of ancient casting and binding. And just like the Native Americans and our friends, the Chinese and the Japanese, appeasement until, this prophet came to earth. That's what people want to call him. Until Christ came to earth, basically all they did was appeasements with demons and demonics.
That's all you could do.
They basically just made burnt offerings. They left out food. They left out candles. They did elaborate ceremonies. Just please, don't bother my family. Go take out, the neighbor, whatever. And then he changed the game, literally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that old name, and you're spoken in your language too. So it's not just that. Just because the name itself does in any language. But we also thought about there's tones. There's images. You have satanic symbols. You have symbols representing demons. You have crucifixes, not crosses, affecting demonic spirits. That if I brought a motif like Bob Larson's sporting, that's letter T with all this decorative stuff on there, do I really think a demon's going to do anything but look at that and say, "What is this, Sesame Street? And brought to you by the letter T? Get that thing out of here." But a crucifix with the body of Christ on it is a reminder over Jesus' victory, which they all, just like in the end of Passion of the Christ, you double down there roaring, and that pretty much is a small sample of how heaven rejoiced and hell cried, like that. It was a big loss, and Jesus' name in itself is going to have an effect for anybody, even people who aren't baptized, because of that, just like the crucifix. But so that's it can be dangerous, because if anybody throws it around, such as the Sons of Scevia, getting all beat up, scratched up, and their clothes ripped off. I mean, we got people out there doing it and getting, beat up in a lesser way, that are throwing the name around. And just because the name itself, spoken of Jesus or the ancient Arabic, that would still have some sort of an effect in itself without the person's piety being even into play. But the higher demons will kick bottom and then some. And if you're just a dabbler of Christianity, not getting committed to it, and you throw Jesus' name around or crucifixes and so forth, you can only go so far.
Right. Okay. And are you guys familiar with the mass possessions that are supposedly going on in Peru and South America?
Not lately. No.
I heard some about it, but no, I didn't read it. The only thing I was reading was about that drug that begins with an F. It looks just like 28 days later where they act like...
Flocka?
Yeah. Where they go ram the windshields of cars, or more like world.
It's kind of like from
War of the World or Z Nation or something.
Yeah, World War Z.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that we did a video on YouTube about zombies and the possibility of it, and the only thing we could really come up with was that somehow or another, if the subconscious is subdued, such it is under certain drugs, PCP or whatever, that the demon can step in and take over, because you basically gave it free rein. And this is what the conjurers and all that did. They took a drug to put them in a certain state just so they could actually tap into that other universe. That's why people shouldn't even put on headgear or anything that might try to do something electronically or whatever. Like with that movie From Beyond, H.P. Lovecraft. That do we really want to see what's beyond the veil? And when they know you can see, how is that going to affect you? How are they going to affect you more? But the zombie thing, but mass possession, if they found a way to put a spell on a whole, Satanist or whatever, on a whole community of people, and they're all vulnerable, because you remember the movie with Denzel Washington, the Fallen, where the demon would just tap on the next person and talk through them, tap on the next person. Everybody's not so freely accessible.
Nope.
So the variables would mean you're going to see some and you're going to see some not. And possession is an extreme. So we're not going to see, it'd be difficult to have a whole town come up with it, especially if it's a Christian town where they're actual Christian. When I say Christian, I don't mean by name. I just mean by their practices. Because there's plenty of people out there, hypocrites, we don't consider Christians. I don't care if they go to church on Sunday or anything like that. It doesn't make them Christian. It's how they are. It's like that song, they'll know we are Christians by our love. It's like, how are you to my neighbor? How are you in Good Samaritan? Did you leave that guy, who's stranded when you could have helped him, give him a jump start? Or are you just taking care of your own needs, trying to make sure you go to heaven? That's not what Christianity is about. It's about sacrificing for your friends, laying down your life, even for your enemies. Love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemies, that kind of thing. So anything to add on that thing, Zon? I don't want to cut you off there on the zombie thing.
No, not at all. I was just, we had a case, really bad case, and the person basically had smoked a bit of that MK loaded with formaldehyde, and person will never be the same, ever. Mm-hmm. It's the drugs out there today are not the drugs they had when I was in school, dare I say 35, 40 years ago, when we were playing with simple stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's, is there a possibility? I mean, I'm sure people have seen, the movie from a long time ago, that there are drugs. There are definitely potions that people can mix and basically put you in a semi-coma.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, too, if you're doing the drug for recreational use and it has been cursed or had a spell put on it, then it's doubly different. I even wondered about some pharmaceuticals. You watch pharmaceuticals, and the only thing they got on that actually gives you a cure is hepatitis C, and actually give you a prognosis that usually cures in 6 weeks, and they give it like a 90-something% chance. And it's like, wow. So this one didn't cause all these other, ailments and stuff that way sound worse than what the original one was. Like, oh, you get to live a little longer, but your body may explode at any moment. Your eyeball sockets may leak blood, and
yeah, I know. And they got those side effects now on stuff. It's like, oh, well, are you depressed right now and you're already on depression medication? It's not working good enough for you. Well, we've got some new meds for you to take that might work, but it might make you more depressed. And you probably want to kill yourself, and you might have a heart attack, but you possibly slim chance that you could maybe not be quite as depressed.
Yeah, and I think they're off the hook because they give you the disclaimers at the end. But the FDA should have never let those through.
Have you heard of the new ones that now that have black label FDA warnings?
What?
Oh, no, a new one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me just put it to you this way. I've got a really good friend that is in the VA hospital right now, and I don't know how much time he's got left. I sure hope he pulls out of this, but they had him on 12 medications. One of them had an FDA black label warning saying pancreatic cancer is the side effect, and all these drugs actually, I think, messed him up so much, in my opinion, that now they're saying he has hepatitis C. Well, how in the heck did he get that? The guy's 65 years old. He's a married man. He works, goes home, and sleeps and works 16-hour days, and now they're saying all this nonsense, and I don't know. I've heard that it could be from all the drugs they gave him that messed up his liver and his kidneys so bad they're looking for a diagnosis. Oh, well, let's just blame it on hepatitis C.
Wow.
But that's one way, or you got blood that wasn't carefully screened, like they do when people get HIV or something.
The funny thing here in this household, we turned off TV about 6 years ago, okay? The only time regular TV, because it's programming for a reason, okay? And so the only time we actually might turn it on is maybe for the 9 or 10 o'clock news. And then we sit back and we look at each other and go, I can't believe that ad's on here, because of the ads, what you're talking about is an invitation to kill yourself. Oh, I need this, or I need that, or I've got that problem. Maybe I'm puking all day. Maybe I'm doing this. But the side effects of the drug are worse than your original condition. And Ken and I are like, what the hell are they feeding people?
Yeah, his vitals are okay, but he can't walk. He can't go to the bathroom without help. But, his vitals are fine. Oh, that's because he's on cholesterol drugs, blood medication, you name it. And it's just... and they got a free pass. They're getting paid trillions of dollars, and it's... I don't know. It's unbelievable. I usually don't rant like this, but with it hitting so close to home right now, it's just mind-boggling.
Yes. And we're totally right there with you. There's no excuse for the dumbing down and drugging of everyone here. And, if you look at it, and it's our opinion, that's demonic too. Why the heck would a nation need to be so fat and so sick to keep pharmacopoeia and big pharmacological environments happy and well paid? Why is everybody fed all this stuff so they can get sick?
Those are great commercials too. I mean, they really are appealing, and I don't think
you want to get sick and take the drugs.
Seriously, or at least jump off the curb and cry.
It's gone a long way. When they put special effects of giant text floating across buildings and stuff like that. Anything you ingest, you have to be careful of. You tell people that are having, if they think sicknesses for whatever reason, try to put holy oil on your food. The possession case, more than once, we told one girl when they get possessed in certain levels, they can't keep food down. It'll cause their throat to lock up, and they don't know about this symptom initially. And they can't sleep. And, it tries to destroy them that way. It destroys the mind and destroys the body with those two things especially. So I'll give you one example. We told her, put 3 drops of holy water, in this first spoonful. They can eat the whole food after that. Sometimes if we felt the need to test it, we could probably have the husband, or the wife, the spouse do it when they're not looking. And then for some reason, I'm able to eat this whole bowl of food. And sometimes these little things are tests, but it just goes to show about ingesting. We're taking this nasty stuff. They used to call it alchemy in the old days. It's like, who knows what's in there, bashed in freeze-dried bat brains, or, it almost seems like they're getting it from a witch doctor instead of some, professional pharmacy, doesn't it?
Well, and you bring up the demonic factor. When you read articles that come out saying that in the big beverage companies, the sodas that are coming out, and some of the foods, they find like human DNA. They find just stuff that shouldn't be in there. It makes you wonder, okay, well, are they making everybody that's ingesting this a part of their little rituals subconsciously? And you bring up the pharmaceutical end. Maybe they do something to these drugs that induce certain entities or energies that not only are they going to be sick physically, but spiritually, mentally, everything else. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think of the possibilities. So hopefully those that are listening to this will become more aware of it. And I would strongly recommend our listeners go to Demonology Today demonology.com if you want to know more about certain demonology and stuff. I mean, this is just a lot of information. And you guys are also like radio show hosts. You do this how many times a week?
Once a week. We also write books. We're currently in the process of vetting our latest edition of Extreme Haunting. We've got a haunted survivors investigation book out on how to safely do investigation to help people get out of this stuff.
We have the FM show also, but it's the same show. It's just it's on a different night. It's on Mondays on 102.7 The Hog FM, and that one has a lot of commercial breaks. But the regular show is on Thursday nights, and we have another show. It's just more political. My wife pops in on occasion on As It Can Be, and that's Apocalypse Nation, more of a political and the logical and without the spiritual argument of what's going on in the world and so forth. They try to keep the two separate, but it's hard to in this world.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
And don't forget our YouTube video channel too, the Swords of St. Michael.
Yeah, those are mini bites because there's so much to know. If you think you're having a haunting, or if you think you might have had an encounter with a demon, and shadow figures are some of the most common and earliest warning signs that you're really messing with stuff, or you're involved with someone, or have stuck your toe in dark water.
What if somebody was born with it?
That could be generational.
That's generational. Usually that means that your parents or your grandparents have either basically consigned you to the dark side, Luke and Laura, you poor things. Or basically you have some very, very dark generational stuff from your own direct line, your parents themselves. So it can be gotten rid of. Just takes some planning, some praying, keeping your mind.
I heard that definition of shadow person could be unmanifested ghost. That came from the plumbers. But this is that idea that they don't know what these are as though it's new. And because it's blacker than a black room, unmanifested is not true. It's manifested. That's the reason why you're seeing it. Our eyes aren't that sharp. Cat can see better in the dark. Some other animals can see better in bright light than we can. We got to put sunglasses on. But it is manifested. Well, you would not be able to see it. You would not be able to detect it with the equipment if it wasn't manifested. So that is a completely wrong and uneducated statement. Now, the essence of it being blacker than a black room, that does say it is a negative spirit, because we look for like I said, the polar opposite factor. And from the positive ghosts, that we believe have actually passed on to heaven and are here for whatever reason, or, some in-between state of a penance, like community service, they don't appear as very dark black shadows. I was trying to think of a case where it actually has, more than once, and we're not really able to narrow it down. So I'd stick by the statement of saying, if it's a shadow, assume the worst. I don't care if you think it is your beloved uncle, it might say, test them too. Test them with with the positive. The positive elements, the brightest room in the universe is, on the side with God. And they're going to be affected by the sacrifice of his son, Jesus. And that's what we find out. And it doesn't matter who believes in it and who doesn't. It's good to know that we can actually test it. And they can't help it either. They get a hot foot and they go, It's like, certain things will get us to react. You know how to push buttons? Well, we know how to push their buttons. That's why we can come up with a small bag of tricks, holy objects, sacred objects. These things are bright lights that are darkness, and you can get a possessed person to basically reveal themselves without even letting the possessed person know. And that's an interesting thing in itself. There is, such as in this one case, this boy my wife mentioned, who had that drug that was laced with formaldehyde. He was about 18 years old. We run him through some discrete tests, that don't give him a hint that we're actually testing to see if there's a demonic presence.
Never.
In addition to prayers before we get there. So one of them was, I get a quarter. I don't want to put a quarter in my pocket because just proximity might, if I have rosary in my pocket or whatever else. So I get a quarter from them. Hey, let me borrow a quarter. So I get a relic, that is in a metal case, rosary or whatever. And I stand behind him and I say, I'm going to test your reactions. This is a psychological test. So he doesn't suspect that I'm actually going to put a relic, a first class relic on the back of his neck. So I touch a quarter there. How's that feel? A little cold. So how does this one feel? A little cold. In that time it was the crucifix that had 7 or 8 relics in there, Farah, wasn't?
Yes.
And no reaction whatsoever. Video, front view, nothing. I mean, that's a red flag right away.
Demons just have an aversion to all things holy.
Yes.
All right. All things that are pure, all things that are good, all things that have good intentions associated with them. And evil likes its own level. It likes dark.
Really had to determine, and that's the way. See, people look too much hard. I could send them to a psychiatrist and all this other stuff, but why would I could spend money when I can do the Sherlock Holmes method of deduction? Let's deduct the possibility of the spiritual without letting them know. That way he can't say, "I am." That's how did you know? Like that. So you got to do it discreetly.
You got to tell them that story about Eric, that one guy that. Oh my gosh, he works at a hardcore prison, and he was testing. He's got our books, yes. Remember, and he was testing, someone to find out, the basic symptoms to find out if this person was possessed, because there's specific things you look for. And one of them is the knowledge of other languages. Like if I were to break into Russian right now, my husband would probably jump me and douse me in holy water because he knows I don't speak Russian.
I like it when you speak Russian. I would jump you, yes.
Hello.
I'm just kidding.
But this guy, exactly, you're such a dog. But he was trying to figure out what was going on with this guy. So he told him, he said, listen, this could get really, really ugly really quick, and I really, really have to have your full cooperation. So I want you to sit still. I am going to pray over you some of the most powerful, most ancient prayers that may bring out the demon in you and may be very dangerous for both of us. And he sat there and went, hippity bobbity boobity, and he started just saying a bunch of gobbledygook, and the guy went ape squaddle, okay? So,
wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we have to be careful, because too many people today, under just a simple power of suggestion, want to believe that, no, I'm not a ridiculous, silly, obsessive, whatever I am. I'm not that. It's something else's fault. The demon made me do it.
Yeah.
They want to blame external things. Oh, no, I've been seeing aliens, I swear. We actually dealt with a gal in California who had an alien chip implant. That was until we found out. And, she might have had an implant. I mean, how do I know that, her boyfriend or her husband or whatever didn't take her out to one of those places like out in Los Alamos and have her chipped? How do I know? I don't know. So when we're looking at things on a larger perspective, we have to look at secondary witnesses, not just firsthand. You have to look at secondary. And then you broaden your circle. Well, we found out from her parents that she's definitely delusional, and she never had a chip implanted anywhere. She
One of the kids.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one case in Osceola, the teenage boy. She's
that
just
was really
crazy.
sad.
You know?
That was so sad.
We really, there's so much of this now. TV's not helping. And Michael's test that he did brings up a point too, that sometimes you want to see if it's fraud. And that's a way to test for fraud too.
True.
Whereas if you were testing to see if a spirit was really there and you didn't want to hint psychologically that, like they really do have an issue, or for fraud reasons too, it's not spiritual, and then you go to do that test secondarily, and they act up, then you might also suspect that there's a fraud at work here, that it's all in their head or, whatever. But that's something to further to test. But the problem with that is that we still don't know if there's a spirit there 100%, unless the other one was done in conjunction with it. And you got to watch how they react too. If he did of other things and they did not seem to react, and that was done as a last resort, I think that would be a good thing, but doing it right away wouldn't be, because there was too many things that weren't tried and analyzed first, that it might be misleading. What if the demon knows about of course he's going to know about the test, and it's just going to act up at that moment just to create doubt.
And that's a piece, we have to point this out, Rex, right now. Most people don't realize the demon doesn't want to be found. He wants to hide. He wants to hang out and have fun with his human. The highest form of acknowledgement in the realms of the demonic is getting you to act exactly like its personality. So it doesn't want to be found. Doesn't want anybody to acknowledge that it's even there. Doesn't want to be poked, pinched, prodded, prayed away, nothing.
PPP.
Exactly. The 3 Ps.
Right.
PPPN.
Have you guys ever seen that footage where like a political leader or one of the anchor people will be on mainstream news, and then all of a sudden their eyes, it looks like it goes all reptilian, and it's, oh man, they're the shapeshifters. But what I've wondered is if, it could be photoshopped, which is most likely the case, or some type of lens anomaly or something. But one thing interesting is the Super Bowl a few years ago, I can't remember the gentleman's name, I think John Jones or Jimmy Jones or something, the guy that used to be the coach for the Dallas Cowboys. That just shows you how much football I watch. But regardless, I didn't even see this live, but a friend of mine watched the halftime show live, and she's not even really a conspiracy theorist, and she goes, I was watching his eyes, and they went all like slit-like cat-like, and then they went back to normal, and it was the weirdest thing I ever saw. So I tried to find that footage for several months on the internet, couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden there was a clip that pulled up on YouTube that she was describing, and you could see his eyes go all weird, and could be contacts, lens flare, whatever. But
that was freaky, I'll bet.
It was the exact one she was talking about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, is either one of those things that I said, or some type of weird just light flare, or maybe there was something like spiritually that could be going through him at that time to cause that type of reaction. I don't know. I mean, but that's just something I'm throwing out there. So when you've seen these people that are possessed, have you ever seen their eyes do anything real strange like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be an illusion on that one, though, because the eye isn't able to do that. And, they can cause you to hallucinate. But, yeah, filling in with black even, that they will go solid black. Sometimes the eye just seems to go black because the iris opens up in an unearthly way during the daytime or in light, where it should do that. Not at all, even in darkness, because they don't open that much. Influence of the demonic spirit, yes. The slit thing, are they able to do that? Well, we're talking to Father Gary Thomas the other day, and we ask this question every once in a while about the head spinning the 360. So far, no one has even experienced the 180 head turn, like an owl. So
right.
The eye thing would be a much easier thing to pull off indefinitely. I mean, because the sheer physics of being able to twist the spine like that without without killing the person would just it would have to be an illusion. And it might have happened. I mean, I don't recall reading about it historically either, in past cases. I'm not talking about historical public ones, Vatican archives or anything. But it might just be one of those feats, like when they twist in unusual ways and they do all these other things to sort of exhibit, kind of like showing off on the eyes. You know what I mean? Instead of revealing a trait or, like that. And the odd thing is we always see demons with bat wings, but the reality is that the accounts, they more look like the gargoyle reptilian kind of thing. That seems to be more in their nature, like a reptile or a snake or something like that, not bats. I don't know how the poor bats got associated with that so much, but accounts, not even horns so much. When someone actually sees a physical manifestation, that is so rare. I don't even know. We talked about that before. Me and my wife on another show. What are the appearance of demons looking like? And then we see horns and, to tell. No. Seems like, but again, she says they don't want to be seen and recognized. That's what we're saying, and it applies here again. And maybe some of these factions that are part of their curse from being in the fallen is to look like a reptile, like the snake in the Garden of Eden. Reptilian scales, that kind of thing, It makes you think, but not sure. Of course, we don't have the answers to that. It's not relevant to what we do. It's an interesting coffee table conversation for sure.
Right. Well, you got... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking of a case we had not too long ago where there was this person had a really, really, really bad infestation that almost killed him. He had a curse on him, and it was a witchcraft case. And basically, what had happened was that his mother, who was like you, agnostic, no specific religion, was brought up kind of Baptist, knows about God and love and Jesus and all that good stuff and apple pie and Chevrolet, but not really, kind of practicing. And the witch that actually cursed this guy actually showed up at his baby shower uninvited and sat with his mother. And his mother told us she had to look 2 or 3 times because she couldn't believe it. She saw the woman's eyes go completely black.
2 feet away.
Just sitting right next to her. She had to look and look and look. And now the girl, who we know very well, has basically kind of, can I say, brown, kind of hazily eyes. Her eyes are not black.
Mm-hmm. They're not that big either.
And she doesn't have, really bad bloodshot eyes to where you're going to look and go, her eyes are a little bloodshot and dark, but no. And guess what? His mother doesn't wear glasses.
And she had no preconceived notion about this person.
Nothing. She had no idea who she was.
Yeah. And then it turns out later on that was significant. And there's actually, I guess I could say it, there's a haunting episode coming out later this summer. They've delayed it, and in an interesting note, because they said that this story really hit them as more real than the others. I'm not just saying that. They said they get a lot of people on these shows, and the stories don't line up, and they have to do a lot of editing and stuff. Well, they've dumped the best actors and the best production they could come up with on this one, because we shot it over a year ago, almost a year. Was it last fall, dear?
Yeah, it's supposed to be out this fall, isn't it?
Yeah, now it's going to be the end of summer before it comes out. But it's entailing this case where he ended up in the hospital in a coma under mysterious circumstances. It says it's blood poison. They couldn't find anything, and we were called in days later when they thought he was going to die as a last resort. So we did. We'll let everybody see the episode. But that started off infestations and oppression. It's the story about mixing faith solutions. This girl came in there with neo-pagan mixing with Christian solutions, and apparently wanted to keep writing herself into the story again and again by coming over and interfering with a closed case. The house is clear, so to speak. If you hate the Poltergeist movie, I'm sorry.
And this is a big
That was a
problem.
good movie. Did you know that girl actually passed away shortly after the third film that they did?
Yeah, because she had an obstructed bowel. But the problem that we're seeing here that Ken's pointing out with, the person that put this curse is that a lot of teams get into it thinking, I'm going to make Discovery Channel. I'm going to, uncover something wonderful. And this is definitely whispered lies. You're not going to find anything except you're going to find either God or you're going to find your life's in a boatload of crap. Yeah. Because people do this so long and they realize, no, there's not big money and there's not big fame in it. There's two sides of the fence that you can be on. There's very, very little fence walkers that actually make it and sit there and play to the masses and play, yes, 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 this is okay. And yes, 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 I'm Christian. There's very, very few of those. And they dance a fine line with their own problems, I'm sure. This person was upset that this was the only case that they'd researched in, 8-10 years they were together, that was actually having problems and difficulty. And there was actual activity, at this house. And they definitely were upset. They were mad that the people that, we had investigated, they had left the team. They said, nope, we don't want any more of this. We're done. We're out. Get us out of the closet. We want the light. Get away from us. And the team got upset. And the people running the team got even more mad. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this a lot. Like I said, in the paranormal community, they all want a piece of something. They're just not sure what they want other than, the money, the fame. And it's not out there. It's really not out there. Yeah. This is a spiritual fight. It's not, winner take all potato sack race that, you get this big little pool or you get a house or a great car or everybody thinks you're wonderful because you found a ghost that doesn't shut up. Mm-hmm. So what? There's lots of ghosts that don't shut up. Get over it.
That's for sure.
That's a fact.
Well, you guys, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on the show with us. Once again, I'd like to recommend our listeners go to demonologytoday.com. You'll have access to a plethora of information there, and then also watch them on YouTube. Just type in their names on YouTube, and you'll have access to the work. Kenneth and Farah, Rose, Deel. Also, check out our website, leakproject.com. We've got access to over 200 full-featured podcasts there, you guys, totally free. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine Time Lord. Stay safe, folks, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Good night. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and tonight we have guests Kenneth and Farah Rose Deel. They're both Catholic spiritual warfare counselors, field investigators, demonologists, and it's a rare husband and wife team in the trenches of the paranormal, spiritual warfare investigations, as well as education, with the combined 80 years actual experience and studies related to ghost and demonic hauntings, possessions. Now, cradle Roman Catholics trained to currently find and uncover many of these spiritual wars that are going on behind the scenes. This is going to be absolutely incredible. I really appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure, folks, to check out demonologytoday.com. They've also got a really cool radio program. How the heck are you guys?
Hot. Excellent. It's hot. We just figured out this year that Missouri goes from comfortable to miserable in, an hour or two.
From cold, uncomfortable to, sinus headache, cold to, my head's hurting me because I just went from really hot outside to the air conditioning inside, which is giving me a sinus headache. So it's like I can't have it either way.
It's crazy. It's crazy. How are you doing?
Oh, doing great. I mean, talk about hot weather out here in San Antonio. It is so humid. When you go outside, it's like walking into a furnace. It's just ridiculous. So, and it seems like it's gotten a lot more intense the past few years. I've talked about this before on a few programs where even if it's 85 degrees outside, the sun, the actual feeling on your skin just seems to be more intense. But are you guys not from Missouri? Is that why you said you just figured that out? Or
Oh, I did. I've only been here 5 years, 6 years now. But my husband's been here quite a longer time. He was actually born north of where we currently live. It amazes me that there's just such a unusual, because you talk to anybody in the emergency room, police department, when it heats up, people go wacko. And it's like the heat just does something to your brain. It does not function well.
Now, how long have you guys been studying demonology?
Studying it is another thing in itself. If you go back, the resources are really, I'll just say crappy, going to the bookstore,
Okay.
so forth. So I had to rely on other things, not just observation and experiences, from an early age. Well, let's go back to 12 years old to 15. Card to the library, St. Louis County Library, big library, get lost in it. And one of the St. Louis County libraries, of course, there's more than one. And when I looked up books, so for example, I saw the phenomenon of, demonic activity and so forth mixed with what they believe is UFO aliens or old mythology like the old hag and all that stuff. And it was very confusing. You had Hans Holzer. He just wrote all these books, real giant, thick things. It's just a mixed bag of pseudoscience and what we consider multicultural, multi-religion. And, it was a very confusing amount. So I relied more upon the resources of the Catholic Church, although a lot of it was trial and error, such as, priests. And we had nuns in the family. I was thinking about being a priest at some point, but I was really into the band Kiss at that time. So,
Right.
I wanted to be a rock and roller, where I talk about, it's like a Twisted Sister video, that in itself. And, there was a bishop in the family too who married my mother and father at the cathedral in the church. So I would ask them questions, and I was experiencing paranormal things in my house. And I later found out my sister, at least one of them did. And all my mom did was give me a St. Benedict medal and tell me I'm just having what's called night terrors. It's like when you wake up and you're still dreaming. And but it got very real over time. But the resources came to the church. The bookstores weren't providing, but the convents and Alexian Brothers Hospital was leveled. We got old books from their libraries. Stories of Padre Pio. Padre Pio was talking, and in these books about being at a prison. Helping people in death row spiritually and being visited by black shadows, that terrorized the monks and shook the bars because they weren't happy about their progress, I guess, with the death row inmates. And that was the first time I really read about shadows. There wasn't anything online. There was no internet. I'm 54 now. So,
can I jump in real quick, Kenneth? I just wanted to add to what you're saying. I've actually got a friend that has this shadow being that follows her around, and not only does she see it, but like her sister has seen it several times, and yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, we could address that later if you'd like to readdress that one when we get done with this part.
Sure.
Farah, what about your resources? You come from a different kind of culture in the household?
Well, it's not only just different culture, but, coming from a family that basically moved constantly. My father was in the military. We had the opportunity to learn about a lot of different cultures, and we were exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different practices, everything from, ancestry to Buddhism to, Christianity to no Christianity, whatever, a big mix. Yeah. And I'd have to say, I didn't even realize, I guess I was studying to find out what demons were, but I started studying back in junior high and high school when, I was really confused as to why, because in humanism, we have all these fabulous ideas that, here, take a pill, your sadness is going to go away. Oh, you've been molested by your boyfriend that you didn't say no to, just go to therapy, you'll work it out. There's all these instant, supposed cures, but they're not really cures. So there had to be something on a spiritual level that was inviting this, not that the victims were asking for it, that they were prone to choices that put them in bad places. So I started looking at, my best friend who was molested by her father for 8 years. I started looking at a couple of people that I went to junior high and high school with in one of the worst parts of the entire United States of America. Don't be offended, because I love Puget Sound. I love the whole area, anybody out there. But because of the amount of rain, the amount of dark days, they have the Love Israel cult, one of the most difficult cults in the entire world to ever deprogram anybody out of. And that's how I got involved in demonology, was looking at all the spiritual effects of everything that I was living around, everything that I saw, and how you add up all the humanistic approaches, and they weren't working. The only thing that could possibly work was something that Ken and I use now. Yeah. We use Christian solutions, and they work for us. And if you chase them hard enough, it works quicker. So that's where mine began. Besides having encounters when I was very young, and my mother is an artist. She's not like one of this huggy, touchy feeling kind of go, oh, come here. No, just go tough it out. Just just tell it, Jesus is going to go kick its butt. Good night. Go to sleep. Leave me alone, Puts nightlight in my little bedroom, my little light. I had a Bambi nightlight. It was so cute. But, it still didn't stop me from seeing things. There was things staring at me at the base of the bed.
Yeah.
So I knew there was always something out there just waiting to get me. But it was getting other people.
First.
Always.
And a lot of people have talked about that old hag syndrome where they wake up with sleep paralysis and they think that this old lady's sitting on them, literally, and sometimes taking their breath and stuff. And so that's kind of like that overall archetype where so many people have seen that same thing. I wonder if it becomes a part of the consciousness, like 100 Monkey Syndrome. You've got many people that claim that they've been abducted by extraterrestrials, and they describe them as little gray men, and they think for sure that they're from another planet. And then I talk to people that say there's no way. They're fallen angels. There's the Nephilim. They're actually demonic. So there's so many different interpretations out there. I wonder if there's really an absolute truth, or if somebody believes it, that is their truth, therefore it's their reality. And it's so fascinating in many aspects. But with the demonology work that you all do, could you walk us through some of the experiences that you've had that have just blown your mind? And you said, wow, I definitely know that the supernatural exists.
When I was in a campsite with a bunch of adults on one side, a bunch of kids on the other side, and this one kid just loved Led Zeppelin. He was probably 4 or 5 years older than us. He decided to slice himself, drain some blood over some candles and some incantations and summon demons. And of course, our tents are kind of like in a circle around this guy and the fire. There's really not a lot of places you can hide. And when everybody thought he was joking, everybody thought he was just being stupid. Whatever happened that night, I crawled in my tent after I heard a guy's really deep guttural voice, and the wind was just like, it was whistling. The adults weren't worried because they were all drinking next to us. But this guy obviously called something. That's not supernatural. That's flippin' demonic. From that moment on, before he committed suicide, he was just absolutely obsessed. He was obsessed with dark black magic. He was obsessed with hurting things, hurting people. His parents could not get control of him. Was that supernatural? Was that demonic? That was definitely preternatural. Whatever it was, he used his blood to conjure. Took him to his grave.
Have you ever heard the song Stairway to Heaven backwards?
No, but I used to really like that song because I was a big, rock head growing up. So never heard it backwards. No. Well, as a matter of fact, my parents, everybody said, oh, you shouldn't listen to that rock and roll stuff. Yeah, but I was out there holding a sign, no nukes and all this other stuff too. So I was a strange kid.
Yeah,
Good for you.
I researched that stuff. That was in the 80s, and they were calling Snowblind by Styx backwards mask too. And this is a little interesting tidbit too. The research I didn't have fully then until I actually heard from the witches that worship Satan. And they actually, when you're in the higher, not the dabblers, like the Facebook is filled with the dabblers all over the place. When they get into the higher level, they actually pride themselves on their ability to be able to speak backwards. They think that's like speaking the demonic language. This is one of the reasons why some of the haunted houses will have writings show up on the walls backwards. And the idea there, as I said in my first book, that are we looking at a mirror world beyond us, an actual mirror, and in other words, reverse, because it's light, dark. There's a lot of opposites, extremely opposites. Maybe it was an error in perspective judgment when the lower level demons who write like children, because the ranks vary.
True.
Is writing backwards, not to be an anarchist, but actually writing backwards because from their perspective, it's the same as writing forward. And a lot of them, there could be many of them, they usually work in larger numbers then. But the backwards masking thing, getting back to that, I was thinking it was either done because, they were under the influence and, a spirit could be communicating through them. And with the wisdom of the ages, they can come up with something that has a meaning forward and backwards. Or they were purposely doing it because they were more the higher level practitioners of the dark arts. Or it's just someone's imagination like that. What's that called, Farah, whenever you look at clouds and you see faces? That
a pareidolia.
There is that in
where
a certain thing when people listen to
everything.
EVPs, when you get kind of hyped up Christian ministers who are just looking for something in the band Styx. I'm very familiar with them. I really doubt even then that Snowblind, for example, had satanic lyrics. Now, I did play Ronnie James Dio backwards. I think it was Rainbow in the Dark. And I got chilled. There's some really creepy stuff there. It was just too much of a coincidence. I think that I can't remember the Stairway to Heaven one, but I had a lot too that was real creepy. And that was supposedly inspired. He wrote that in 15 minutes. Now that sounds like one of those scenarios I just gave, where it was inspired by a spirit rather than his creativity, and that's why it could be done so quick with a meaning backwards and forwards. So very possible.
Well, actually, that song that was written, actually, he claims, Mr. Page claims that it was done via automatic writing.
Yeah.
Also done in the same home that Aleister Crowley used to own off of the Loch Ness out there. So now, yeah, this is a true story. They were fascinated with Aleister Crowley and what he did. But one thing that I'm wondering is, it was either done via automatic writing, or the people that put that together knew the words, and what they did was they used the technology, like you said, that backwards writing, where they could just add it in the clip and kind of give this woo-woo factor to the work. You know what I mean? Because you guys probably remember the Beatles album that came out where they basically said that Paul McCartney, fake Paul, was killed in a car accident, and there was all that symbology and occultism and stuff. So whether it's legit and they did it to warn people, kind of like their rituals, I guess, in music, or it was something as a marketing ploy, either way, it's genius and it's fascinating. So for those that haven't listened to Stairway to Heaven backwards, you can actually go to YouTube and it'll show you the words and stuff. And it's the exact opposite of what Stairway to Heaven talks about. It's like, you will sell your soul to hell and go.